The writing advice you're getting on YouTube can be 100% true. Even good writing advice can make your book worse. How is that possible? Believe me, it's not what you think. I'm not going to point out tips that look good on the surface but are actually bad. Nope, I'm talking about good writing tips. Tips I actually use myself. I've wanted to make this video for a long time because you're not going to find this information anywhere else. Why? Writing gurus don't want me telling you this. Just like it's not in the best interest of the makers of Ozempic to say that exercise is a great way of promoting weight loss, it's not in the best interest of a lot of YouTube writing coaches for me to give you this information. I am going to warn you. Once you know this information, you will not be able to unknow it. So this video comes with a little bit of a warning. Only keep watching if you are the kind of person who would choose the red pill. This video will destroy your belief in writing tips forever.
You take the blue pill. The story ends. You wake up in your bed and believe whatever you want to believe. You take the red pill. You stay in Wonderland. And I show you how deep the rabbit hole goes.
So, how is it possible that good writing advice can actually make your book worse? Well, let me start with an example from my own life. I recently watched a video on 9 things you should leave out of your book. I liked the video. I liked the advice. I agreed with just about everything in the video. You know what? I think I included all 9 of those avoidable words in my memoir. Did this ruin my memoir? I don't think so. My memoir was published by Three Rivers Press, an imprint of Penguin Random House. Not to brag, but Paul Feig loved my memoir. Paul Feig is a Hollywood film director. He directed movies like Bridesmaids and A Simple Favor, Spy, The Heat. Here's what he had to say about my book. This is a very smart, very funny book. Wendy Dale is an extremely talented writer, yada, yada, yada. You get the picture. So I guess Paul Feig just forgot to mention, say, Wendy included 9 avoidable words in her memoir, which leads us to the problem I want to talk about in this video. So I want you to think about the problem of good writing advice this way. 3 people go to an emergency room. Jaime is having a seizure. Abdul is vomiting. Jessica has a slight limp. So who is going to be treated first? Jessica with her little limp? Abdul with his gross but not life-threatening vomit? Seizure for the win. Jaime takes it. Just like in the emergency room, some things are really important to keep in mind. And then there are some things that even can be left untreated.
Just walk it off.
The problem is that all of the writing advice out there is given the same weight. So this would be like having a person show up to the emergency room, a person who's having a panic attack, and having a doctor say, rush them off to surgery, stat. It just doesn't make sense. And so a newbie writer will spend all of this time deleting all of those 9 avoidable words from their manuscript. But why does that hurt their book? Well, because their book is hemorrhaging and they just don't see it. They think that fixing 9 words is going to make their book better, when what is actually happening is it's just distracting them from the problem that is making their book boring and confusing and simply unreadable. Do you want to write a great book? Well, let's talk about what actually does make a difference. It's not 9 words, believe me. So let's talk about what it is in your manuscript that requires major surgery and what could probably be fixed with a Band-Aid and a kissy poo. Let's talk about the triage scale of priority. So all emergency rooms have a priority scale, which determines the order in which patients get seen. So you have the red emergency, the yellow priority, and the green non-urgent cases. So first of all, let's talk about the green category. So this is the sprained ankle, need a couple of stitches category. I don't know if the writing tips in the green category make any difference. So what is the huge problem here? Well, most of the writing videos that I see get made are in the green category. So they're giving you tips that don't really make a difference. What they are doing is making you waste time and distract you from what actually needs fixing in your book. So, what kind of writing advice can you ignore? Non-urgent advice number 1. Advice that tells you ignore these types of words. So you'll see videos like 9 kinds of words to leave out of your book, verbs you should avoid, that sort of thing. There are writing gurus out there who seem to hate the word that, as an example. Well, that is a word that I happen to like, and I am going to keep using that word because it's a word that I include in my prose, and that is fine by me. But I think that my prose will be just fine. Non-urgent advice number 2. Another kind of advice you can ignore. Mix up the length of your sentences. Supposedly, a mix of short and long sentences is going to make your prose more engaging. But is it? So for me, the problem with this advice is that I want a reader to forget that they are reading the words on the page. I want them to be transported. You know that feeling when you forget you're reading a book and you become part of the story. So who cares if you mix up your sentence length? I want readers to forget they are reading sentences. Non-urgent advice number 3. Great prose relies on all 5 senses. You know what? I hate this advice so much, partly because it is probably the most common advice you will hear when someone says what makes for good prose. But if I wanted a sensory experience, I'm not going to pick up a book. I'm going to go to an aromatherapy store. Your reader is not looking for a sensory experience. They want an emotional experience. And that is not the same thing. Non-urgent advice number 4. Use strong verbs. So, have you heard this advice before? Don't say walk. Say sauntered. Don't say ate. Say nibbled. This tip is one that I actually think makes your writing worse. Why? Well, I want writing to feel sincere. And these strong verbs often make what you're saying sound a little bit over the top, melodramatic. Strong verbs, to me, feel like they're trying way too hard. Like a used car salesman trying to increase the urgency in a really fake way. And strong verbs tend to call out the writing itself instead of your reader getting lost in the experience. By the way, if you want to know what makes a book good, I suggest you check out the Memoir engineering system. It took me 15 years to analyze over 1,000 manuscripts to figure out the principles that all memoirs follow. Check out the link in the description. So none of the advice I've given you thus far is really very important. And if it is, a line editor can fix these tiny little problems with your book. All books definitely need a line editor before they go to print. I think you can ignore absolutely all of these green category tips. That little paper cut is going to heal on its own. You just don't need stitches. So, none of these tips are going to make much difference in the quality of your writing. Avoiding certain words, varying your sentence length, using all 5 sentences, using strong verbs, and number 5, show, don't tell. I haven't brought this one up yet, but I've made other videos on my channel about show, don't tell, so check them out next. So let's move up to the yellow category and talk about things that actually do make somewhat of a difference. So this is the yellow priority category. Number 1, writing good dialogue. Why is this important? Well, writing bad dialogue can be really cringeworthy. Why? Well, it takes me out of the story and reminds me that I'm reading a book. So why is this yellow instead of red? Well, I'm going to tell you a secret. You can actually write a really good book with hardly any dialogue. Bad dialogue sucks, but the solution is to use a lot less of it in your memoir. At the end of this video, I'll leave a link to another video of mine. Dialogue is not as important as you think. Number 2. Creating believable characters. So your goal is to transport your reader and make them forget they're reading a book. You want them to come into your world And good characters are a huge part of that. You want your characters to feel real. The truth is, it's not that hard to create believable characters, but most people make this harder than it needs to be. A lot of writing advice tells you to include lots of details. And so I see people going crazy telling me what a character looks like from top to bottom. All of these details. Okay, so do details really matter? Well, I'm going to give you 2 character descriptions, and I want you to think about which one you like better. Number 1, the man was wearing a black suit with a white shirt and a yellow tie. His shirt looked freshly starched. He had perfectly pressed pants and shiny leather shoes. Okay, here's the second example. The man's suit was perfectly pressed. I always distrusted people who looked too put together on the outside. It made me wonder what ugliness lay within. So let me give you a trick for creating interesting characters. Make it more about you than it is about them. Number 3, writing good description. I do think it's important to be able to describe place in your memoir, but I have to say that most of the writing advice I've seen in YouTube videos actually leads to terrible description. So this is from a recently posted, incredibly well-viewed YouTube video. Here is the before version. Yumi walked through the streets of Shimedo with her hood up and her head slightly down, feeling like she should be on high alert. Rain poured down on her as she slowly and cautiously made her way through the somewhat dark and suffocatingly narrow alleys, navigating the city, mostly by memory. And this is the after version. Hood up, head down, defenses on high alert. That was the only way for a woman to walk through the streets of Shimedo at night. Rain pelted Yumi's jacket as she navigated the twisted dark alleys, guided by the smell of city smog, hovercar exhaust, and fried cuttlefish. Even in the dead of the night, Shinmeido never slept. Everywhere Yumi turned, the city hummed with life, traffic whirring, sirens wailing, neon lights melting over the slick pavement in ripples of teal and magenta. Honestly, I hate the after version so much because it's so over the top. There's just no sincerity there. It's trying way too hard. And as a result, I don't lose myself in the story. I see a bunch of words on the page. I feel like someone is shouting at me instead of offering up words that create a story I can lose myself in. The before version is actually better, in my opinion. I would just take out the word somewhat. What I see so often in videos with writing tips to make your book better are actually writing tips to make your book melodramatic. And all that this over-the-top writing does is remind me that I'm reading a book. These kind of examples to me feel like writing that is screaming at you to pay attention to them. This kind of writing, to me, feels desperate. And as a result, it's impossible for me to lose myself in the story. Okay, let's get into the red category. This is the emergency urgent category. This is the category of writing errors that will make your book unreadable if you don't fix them. So let's talk briefly about what makes a book good. You need structure for your book, which is synonymous with plot, and you also need the writing itself. You need prose. So a lot of people worry about getting the structure perfect for their book, but I want you to think of this like a house. Now, when you walk into a beautiful home, you don't say to the owner, "Wow, who is your structural engineer?" What you might say instead is, "I love the color of the walls and this great flooring, and oh, you have the beautiful couch and the artwork, the layout, that great view." So that is what you notice when you walk into a house. And I want you to think of this as your prose. Writing great, emotionally affecting prose is what is going to make a reader love your book or not. And the key to great prose is affecting your reader emotionally, giving them that sensation that they are lost in the story. However, if you don't have good structure, no one is going to notice your prose. If you don't hire a structural engineer to build your house, your house is going to fall down. You're not going to have 4 walls. So no one is going to notice that gorgeous artwork, your beautiful couch. You need structure to hold your story together. And if you don't have structure, your reader is going to be confused or frustrated. They're going to wonder, why is the writer telling me this? So they'll never get to that beautiful prose because they're going to be annoyed by your book. So basically you have all this gorgeous furniture, but no one is ever going to see it because your house is missing 4 walls. So having said that, what are the topics in the red category? Well, they are structure and prose. These are the 2 most important topics that you should be worried about. You want to learn lots more about structure, I suggest you watch this video next.